Hi, everyone. Apologies for the delay. Okay. So just because I have a lot more of this is more of a seminar type than actually a tutorial. So that it is product, I would prefer is instead of me just because earlier also I mentioned it's a lot more helps to improve your understanding, spatial alignment. That's why we are kind of giving more, let's say, dense information that will help, especially in the alignment process. Like, so alignment in this case means that how you see what we see, and how you can get actually become in the same mindset for approaching the work. Okay, so maybe I will just share my screen, and what I would prefer then is people just to experience or like kind of explain what surprised them recently with what they're doing, like in their work. Like, so in terms of like how, when you are developing, what impressed you most? Is it that AI just creating code, like, or do you see, like, in terms of, has anyone tried background agents? Like, do they understand swarms? So, or what kind of news that kind of make you more curious so that you kind of actually tried it or experimented it. And in particular, I know the most important part is that resource-wise, you are very limited in a number of ways, but how much of that becomes like the holding kind of stopping you, and how much of that actually you are circumventing, especially, do you have a pro account because, I don't know, you have bothered some of your relatives somewhere who are able to, have some credit card to help you get some pro accounts, or is that not part of your radar? How do you actually plan to be able to get more resources? So I think that's so the thing that we talk is going to be the agentic runtime of 2026. This is more like explaining how the kind of evolving current set of players, like, just very much. I mean, I'm sure so I'm not going to bother you in actual details of each of them, but be able to just highlight at least some of the sets of tools, and how the emerging capabilities, but it's not emerging actually, it's like a more actual capabilities what they are currently being in offer, how much of it you actually appreciate and use them, and then as well as also, like, in your current project, you could probably try some form of strangler swarm from Cloud Record if you have some access of it. I know that most of you might not have access. But yeah, so, and it's really the seminar, I have given this seminar some time ago, and it has already evolved, and that seminar was intent as a code. So I know that we are talking about intent, correlating intent AST. I talked in that, but how many, I am not sure how many people can actually, I mean, it's a very easy concept, but how many people can actually understanding what that intent is, and what, as much as what code. So you have to understand what intent is as much as what you understand code is. So is that something you have understood? So I want it to be more question Q&A driven. And then I will just use this slide. So I'm just gonna go through. I think you have seen some of these things. I think we have repeatedly said it's code is cheap, intent is expensive, because intent writes code, and so what actual code is written by agents, and intent is told to agents, right? So and so what you tell to agents, and how you tell to agents, and how you set up the agents is more important than basically, because once that they are set, like agents becomes now are just machines. They don't get tired, so they basically produce. They're just factory. They basically produce so much. So like that intent specification and intent kind of management is the most important part and the most expensive. And this you know already. So the AI software development, and this is where we are talking about in every layer of the software stack, including what we call this GitHub, is evolving, and including that what we call Wiki and Jira, that high level spec. It's what you are actually with your current implementation, with the current project. That's what you are actually trying to do, right? You're trying to define this, like the Wiki Jira type, which is a documentation and intent. We call it now intent, but that intent used to be just part of a ticket system. That part is one. And then also managing code, like managing basically the artifact of code, which is what GitHub was good at. Now is also basically is being, intent is, it's not just only this one, intent has to be managed similarly. And so that's the one. So there are many other Mintify and Delive who are actually automating updates on your doc, but we're even talking about like all of this, the GitHub and what's like, they must be correlated. Right now they are correlated outside the box, like the ID, the agentic, the PRs, the QA, they are actually correlating them, but they, in principle, they have to be one and managed. Everything has to insert features as part of the part. So, and just the in terms of value, if you are not yet convinced, it is estimated that this will be about a 3 trillion GDP impact. And so stuff like that. And then in terms of, I think TDD, BDDs, and SDD are the kind of like recycled version in this era. And GitHub 2 spec and the constitution, as well as also the specified plan task, which you know already. And this AI-based intent versioning, this is the approach you are actually doing now. So, and some, like if you follow some of the OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, QA, and other, you will start seeing that there is actually, it's a very much balance between actually being able to really align, like, you can't review all of what AI produces. That's impossible. And so there are methodologies that are also being devised, how to increase, when to check, how to check, because when you have so much things, you can't check everything. So it becomes science, statistics becomes that. So it goes into signal to noise. So this is, source code, updated spec, test plan, execution logs, all of them, they are basically merging to create the new source of like versioned code. So I'm kind of going through very quickly this so that you know exactly what I have, these 2 slides, and then I'm kind of now putting it as Q&A for us to discuss and talk and expand. Okay. Anyone, is everything that I am saying clear? What are the concepts that you want to ask or get more idea? And which part do you want me to go through in more detail, if there is? So this is a reverting. I'm saying I'm giving a seminar, but I'm showing you my contents and asking you basically your intents. So, and I'm fine if everything is clear, or if there is nothing interest, like, then we can just close it. But I'm assuming if there's any question, then you can just ask me, maybe explain this, maybe explain that, things like that, and then I will be able to do so. Okay, so I'm kind of going, where's my Surafe?
Yeah. Hey. Okay. So one question I have in particular is like, when you're working with agents, like what do you call an agent in terms of technicality? So as a software engineer, what I usually do to have an agent is to make a small program that interacts with an LLM, and maybe there's a bunch of conditions and a bunch of like pre-written prompts as to where it will go, where and how it will act. But that's just something that I did with the dev, like normal programming, just having API requests and stuff like that. But is there a more practical and more technical way to make an agent? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, so I think in the probably the next week project or so, that's what, like, you have to create agents and you start learning. There are frameworks that makes this thing a lot more easier to handle. So for example, agent, it's a probably, the first thing is to understand, when you interact, you're just basically, you can say many things. You can put hi, which is just simple. You can put an emoji, like a smile or sad, or you can put 100-page PDF and 6 Google Drive documents and a code base, entire code base, and you might be asking then a couple of paragraphs for ask. Now the agent has to understand, has to have that dynamics to be able to, first is just parse everything that you have given it, and second is just to understand using LLM. LLM is the brain and has to understand like the query, and then break down and specify, okay, what's actually the question currently, given all the context that I know and given all the instructions my designers or the designers have put to the agent. So there is a framework, like a usual called React framework. Basically the first thing is just you plan, and then you then act. So that's basically like you would observe. So you would observe, and then you would test hypothesis, and then basically you would act on, and then you say get it back. So there are a couple of lots of variation of React. This React is more like and act and yeah. So it's basically act and re. It's not the React programming language. It's kind of how you design agents. And there are many other agent types. But the usual one, it's exactly this. The usual way of now handling is very much, you have a planner, you had a reviewer, and you have a worker. And in each of these, basically the planner takes the entire inputs and scans the repo, and then creates a plan, and then stops for human check, the usual one. So now almost all like IDs, they now have, if I go, so I don't share that one, but if I go to any of my editor, almost all editors, like they now have, like before they didn't, but now everybody has a plan. They break down into tasks, and then for each task they compute which mode they want to get in, whether it's a planning mode, or just a complete plan mode, or whether the task is sufficiently, not complex that they can actually plan and execute, or if it is, they determine the size. If it is the tasks are complex, then they may need human verification. So basically, then they would just generate a plan, stops for human check. And then once the check has been done, so in whether it's a background agent or a kind of like anti-gravity or cursor, then what you do is then you basically give it, you approve maybe with certain feedback, and then based on that feedback, if the feedback is not very critical, or it can just go with the plan. If it's replanned, then it replans until you iterate. But once you plan, then agents then execute tasks in parallel. Again, this is how like different IDs work. Like you may have swarms, or you may just have just one agent that just executes one sequential. And then after that, there is almost all now also IDs would then have reviewers. So that means in the plan, it's already specified that some things has to be checked. So the plan already pre-specifies what reviewers will do. And then they basically, so this is, one structure. And now how the planners do, the planners will have like, it can be an agent in its own, a sub-agent that really is delegated. And for that, it might include a number of MCP servers for data collection, and a number of other parsers, that are specialized. For example, if it is a code or a bug, or if it is, a DevOps versus like if it's just a feature. So depending on how complex you want to make it, they have that. And the skills, they are automatically also loaded and configured. So basically, even if the structures are like that simple, the agent built in, the very first part is the kind of interaction with the person, with the user. And the second parts are like a more distributed plan-based, and then execution and review this structure. And then all of this is, we're talking from a conceptual side, but from actually the physical side, you need memories. Like everything is like, you have different types of memories. The context is just the actual working memory. That means, you can think of the context being the object of interest, the active RAM version for an agent. And then you have other episodical and, many other long-term and many types of memories. That's really the current innovation, is around actually developing memories that basically becomes like effective, so that you kind of compress. And how you compress, how you manage, that's called context engineering from the memory, what you store and which artifact, and all that is kind of another innovation. So that's from the infrastructural perspective. You have to have memory, you have to have state updates, you have to have like, exit points. And those basically are usually acyclic or cyclic, actually DAGs, like basically becomes a tree type of, so that's a structure. Like for example, today that my names are like the different agent frameworks, like LangGraph, for example, would provides you a lot more. So LangGraph is now the default. I mean, they're a lot more used. So you can create actually like these things just as a simple Python graph, and the states basically update. And for each of them, you have a branching, a conditional, how to shift from one to another. And deep agents in LangGraph can allow you to actually iterate one agent with one simple with one instruction, can go actually a much deeper depths. Basically, you can say deep research after that, do this and do that. Basically, you can give it a very high level goal. That high level goal, it could just be create a C compiler. Then the planner will plan, kind of design, do research. There might be sub-agents that will do certain research, update, create, the critic agent that would critic, all of that. And then ultimately that the workers will work and then reviewers review. So that is called deep agents. Deep agents kind of can execute for hours, days, weeks, months, implementing. So I think let me stop there, because that's what you're asking is more if there is a structure, and I'm telling you a lot of that structure, both at the conceptual, at the infrastructural, and also at just basically the, let's say, methodological sense. So is that something similar what you're asking? And does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, I'm excited until we start working on them actually.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Other questions? Yeah, okay. So Sumaya asked about intent being expensive. What does the most common mistakes? I think the common mistakes is very much like you have no idea what you're defining. And you're basically off the, you didn't. So when you are not researching, and let's just put it this way. So somebody just puts, and then it takes the current challenge document, give it to the LLM, break down into tasks, and and then it breaks down in tasks, and the person doesn't read them, and it believes that the AI just is doing great, and then it just says like, now execute this one, and then yeah, the AI again, just it has been the AI being AI just executes the code, and then the code is not running, and just say the code is not running, just run it. And okay, the AI tried to fix it, something comes out, and you're done. So now your intent is lost, right? So the intent in the challenge document was good, but the challenge, not verifying the intent, not understanding the intent so that you can guide, you can manage. It's the same as like you hire a manager for a coffee shop, and if you know what coffee shops are, and then there are waiters, and then there are also the baristas, as well as also the kitchen. And a bad, so kind of common mistake for managers there is that they trust the baristas, they do their work. They trust the waiters, they do their work, and they trust the kitchen, they do their work. So what they do is that they just, dress nice and just basically like smile. And if the business works, great, they are happy. If the business doesn't work, they just say like, I was there. You see, that's kind of common, really mistake. The role of the manager there wasn't just to become like, I don't know, a beauty, like, I don't know, some kind of like a sculpture there, They were meant to really make sure that there is harmony between all of these people, and all of these people know, like, there's a certain rule that is, it's called, waiters probably really have to ask the clients every once in a while, they have to check on them if they have to, if there's anything they need. And baristas must really just use the right milk. They should put it in the fridge when it's not used, and they should just make the coffee in a certain way, and they should follow a certain standard, certain design. And the kitchen, so the manager is supposed to really, to avoid the common mistakes means they have to check regularly these things. So that's really the same. Like if you trust everything and you don't really understand anything, that's a common mistake. I think earlier it's also said. But when you are diligent, when you are really do your work, just like the manager at the coffee shop. But in this case, your baristas are like the ID something, one of the agents, some of the agents are your baristas, some of the agents are, some of the chat GPTs, whatever you are talking are probably your kitchen. And, it's kind of like the waiters are basically your IDs and all that. And if you check regularly and if you are inherent, then I think that's when we say avoid common mistakes. So I hope it gets some. Sumia? Okay. Yeah. What else? Please just feel free to, if you haven't done it, it is I challenge you, just raise your hand and just say something, just ask something just that comes to your mind. If you haven't done it also, especially. So Rafi, yes.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I'd like to ask is, this has to do with the field itself. So as someone that's been doing software engineering for a while, I know what people want from me in terms of business. It's like they either want an app, a website, or some sort of fix on a server or something like that. But when you become an AI engineer, what do you necessarily sell? This might be a different question from the topic, but
no, it's not. I think it's very much so. I think it depends again. Most people would expect something depending on how much they know. So if you are internationally now and in a competitive environment, they know exactly what can be done in 24 hours and in 48 hours. So for example, this one, this website, this is just an HTML that I just generated. So I just designed it, with all the elements, just and it took me, yeah, of course it's not me. It took me probably 2 minutes just to generate it. And if I were to generate this one some time ago, I mean, you can imagine with all this like interactive environment and with all these graphs generation, also here, like just that, and ensuring that the texts that are exactly as, following very simple, thing. This is a one pager. So now what's expected from you is that such things or more complex things, I expect from you like in a day. Like a very complex project in 48 hours, I probably would expect more. I'm not really interested you like taking so long time. And you just should be so native to be able to just generate these things at speed and complexity and having the securities, all that. So you have to be like, you don't tell me about where to deploy. You just have to do all. You will be DevOps, you will be developer, you will be everything. So I think what's the market is that you are a manager, you're not the worker, so make it done. If you have to take 100 agents, do it. And as long as I offer you that resource, I expect more. Before, the resource was you. Only you were the resource. Now it's like the resource is what I provide. The amount of tokens I give you, you have access to. The quality of tokens you have access to. And basically, the compute infrastructure you have access to. So if I give you more resource, then I expect more. Just like from a manager, if you hire a manager for a big enterprise that has 50,000 employees, you don't expect that person to just generate one website, kind of like something. You expect from the whole this manager to run the whole company and generate really incredible things with that amount of resource. So let me stop there and let me see if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yep. Johannes?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my question is there any tech stack language, for example, Python or SQL or whatever language, do we need to know to be a better privileged in this, not learning, but in every project we're going to do? Is there any tech stack we need to be familiar with?
Yes, I would say Markdown and intent specification and verification. The language, and then English, probably. So it's less, so it's less about the programming language these days than more about what you would compose to. So just to give you one example, I never programmed anything with Java, but I was able to provide a very, let's say, a medium-sized project in Java as a Java backend and that. And it didn't need, as long as I understand. So the software principles you have to understand, right? So I wanted a certain way of pattern. I research like what I should do, what is in the Java, like the same equivalent of, let's say, ORMs and the same equivalent of like fast API. So I kind of translate, that's a speed of like thinking and more, and then specify that one, research that one, get an idea, and then I said, okay, let's use that database, let's use that, Java framework and Springboard this, Springboard that, and then build that. And then I was able to just, of course, learn Java in the fly. Because it's just this reading, and if I don't understand something, I will just highlight and say like, okay, what were you actually trying to do here? And I get the idea, and then I co-learn whatever language I want. So I would be, yes, as long as if you don't know software engineering or like the principles, how to build, sometimes you don't know where to start. It's the same as like now, when I was trying to create music, was challenging. Not because I can say just generate music, but to create a really, really good music, I have to understand the entire, like some idea about signal analysis a lot more, But more than signal analysis, the signal analysis I'm familiar with actually, but I didn't know where to start, how to do. So I had to research a lot more on how musicians do, but it would still take me so long time to understand really how good musics are created. So in that sense, the software engineering, the music engineering, I needed something. So the domain knowledge I need. But after that, just the actual creating of it is not. Like, so the same as like we didn't need to know about the machine language, like all of the how the BIOS is programmed. We don't have to know. But we still have to know computer, right? That they work in this way and all of that. Yeah. But so I would say it's not Python or anything per se. I mean, the software engineering, in any way, some language, I'm sure, and then build on top of that, and every time learn. So from the agent is basically your teacher as well. So the agent knows a lot more. You give it an intent, it produces something, you see it, and you learn, oh, like, okay, what kind of pattern is that? Oh, that's separation. Oh, did it apply separation of concept? So if you learn more of the software architecture, then you basically start also having a better language. With a simple language, you can describe to the LLM, right? So if you didn't know separation of concern, you probably have to write, I don't know, 2 pages to explain it to it. But if you know the word separation of concern, you just say, apply separation of concern. The LLM knows, because that's a dense knowledge. Or if you say like, okay, that I am going to apply some form of, one, let's say, dry principle. Yeah, you just say, you have to apply this dry principle or this or that. I think just those things will help. The more you know, the more, but you can learn them. But the more you learn, the more you appreciate, exactly as I say, technical data, cognitive data. The more you know these things, the easier you specify them, and then that increases the, let's say, your language becomes more sophisticated and very, you can describe in a small amount of words a very dense information and precise information. So that's the case. So the difference between a lawyer and a non-lawyer is that a lawyer just knows how to just quote the right thing at the right time. Otherwise, if you are not a lawyer, you're kind of talking about morals and principles, but the judge doesn't understand you, because the judge understands a law language, right? So a language of the law. So the lawyer has that, and the same is here. The more you understand the language of programming, the language of software development, the better you become.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But another thing is, does that mean, like, for example, I finished software engineering, and in my classes, like, taking video courses has a high value those days. Not now, of course. And what's your comment now on taking video courses or whatever like that? Is it, can we basically say it's outdated to, see video courses and whatever?
I would not really call anything outdated, because it depends on your goal. But you can learn a lot. And if someone is a teacher for you, just the agent is as a teacher. And if someone is helping you to become master, if they have something special to give you, I think I would say that's good. But a mediocre teacher, I think it's better. Yeah, it's outdated. This is more like, so because you can learn it a lot better. You have the Harvard and whatever courses if you want to learn. So just you can access them through just ChatGPT. Just tell me, act like a Harvard professor or somebody. Just say like the best video, like, I don't know, Netflix director, and just teach me the concepts. It can teach you like that. So a mediocre, it's only just they survive only because of the lack of information, that people don't have information. But in principle, now that part is very much, you can. But every knowledge also, you have to know you have only 24 hours to consume, and on top of that, you will be bored. Your brain will not be active all the time. You have to really balance between your concentration, your motivation, and all of that. That's going to be the engineering of that. How you leverage that to get more is going to be the most important, actually, other skill. So yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, if you had already an idea and if you're curious about music and you learn more about music out of just purely curiosity, that will help you as well. So any hobby now can be your anything, as long as you're curious. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So is intent essentially the process of structuring our idea in a way that teaches the machine how to act and interact? Yeah, I mean, intent is exactly, so anything is an intent, right? So if it's not a technical definition, like, you know, your intent to create, your wish is your intent, but the difference between a wish and an intent is that an intent is exactly as you, the process of, it really takes into account the art of, the intent is the art of structuring your idea exactly in such a way that that art is compressing the outputs in a more literal way, in a way that machine understands it, so that the LLMs can then have a clarity on that. But it's, so that's one side is a good intent, a good prompt, you can call it, but it's not really a prompt, because a prompt is just only, it's not only the description of it, but like within that description, there's so many things that can be interpreted and misinterpreted. So structuring the context, grounding it, so the engineering of, you know, like distilling your thoughts and the product in an abstract way, and then for that abstract language to define contexts and context engineering, and then structuring is such that multiple agents and, you know, the right environment builds it faster is, yeah. So, but ultimately, yes, exactly, it's the process of structuring your idea in such a way that it can be implemented. You know, a good intent structure basically can be implemented by whether weak or strong agents as well. So that means, you know, if you apply, I don't know, Cloud Code, which let's consider it probably one of the strongest agents now, it will do it well. But also if you don't have Cloud agents, but you have some other agents, they, because you specify them in a structured way, such that you have implemented, you know, like also definition of done and things like that, then that also, that allows it also even a weaker agent to implement it. So in effect, I think you are right. It is really that process, and basically the entire element, the description of it, your process, your packaging, and your structuring. So it's a process more. Yeah. So yeah, that does it.
Okay. So my question is, if I am using ChatGPT or other agents as a domain expert, my expertise in the domain will be sufficient, and I shouldn't need to understand how context is loaded or how the system is architected. I just need to judge whether the output is correct or not in my field. But as a builder, like the current challenge you gave us, who should control context loading? You know, like what gets automated, what gets controlled, and what gets deterministic.
Yeah.
Because what core principles do we need to understand to ensure the system is reliable and trustworthy?
Yeah, very good question. I
The
mean,
domain expert.
yeah. So, but yeah, very good question. Very, very to the core of the problem. But you have to know, in this case, you have to assume that the person or whatever has pre-specified some of the intents. So your goal isn't to really help in context management and bringing context. It's like, given there is sufficient, like there's already like intents that are outlined and codes that are written based on those intents, your role is at this point is really to kind of identify, you know, the codes that have to be changed or the intents, and then the associated codes to be changed, and also like as they change, updating what has been changed. So you're not really, like, if a person really had a bad context, your hook will not improve it. So your part is, let's assume, like as always, when you build something, you have a certain assumptions, and this assumption is that the context, there's sufficient context there and it's already built, and your hook is really just making sure that as a person is building on top of that, it will not drift. So you will faithfully track it. You know, Git, for example, whether you write a bad Git commit message or not, it doesn't care. It just only gives you a tool, a deterministic tool, that when you push, it will be saved in a database in a certain way, and it's now tracked. The state, whatever you committed, is so it's not, and so it's up to you then the other things to do. Does that make sense? So you have to assume that there's like the domain, whatever the person, the user of the ID controls. You're only providing a system, a deterministic system that would simplify their life. You know, they will specify an intent, you identify an intent, and you basically identify the code, but you created that structure for them so that they don't have to really, you know, they don't have to do. So for example, yeah, Gemini anti-gravity is doing that. It creates a knowledge base and it creates artifacts. And all of the plans, all of the walkthroughs, all of the things are now saved. So it always knows what has been done, and it can pull the necessary artifacts. That's really what it does. And it's you who just basically lead to the creation of that. So you can create artifacts that are very bad, or you can even delete them, remove them. It's a user. So your part is really creating the system. And a good user will just, you know, basically don't have, you know, will have a simpler life. And you solve it, I think, as I said, you solve then the trust and the kind of cognitive dates. So that's the point. Yeah, ask me if it's not clear again, because the question is important and I want you to understand. Okay, so Jacob, and I would answer then also after that, Derek. But yeah, go on, Jacob.
Okay, Abdul, thank you for giving me this chance. I was just curious about the previous project you showed us earlier. You said you made it within 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I want to ask you, how did you before started? Or was that literally from scratch? Like, did you already prepare the intent?
Yeah,
in the structure?
Yeah, I had the intent, which means I had a research already. You know, I continuously research, and I had basically, you know. So I'm just gonna. I think it's not here, but I had some of the ideas. Like I had done some research, and I had just kind of broke down the ideas, but it was just a Google Doc, the other one, and the site I didn't even have to do. You know, I mean, just as simple as just create a website based on this. And yeah, and a lot of these days I don't go even to Google Slide or anything. I just create an HTML, and if I need to share it, I will just kind of deploy it simply, and then just it's shared. And I think nowadays even I don't have to do that. There is, I think, Vercel and others, they have also their just way of generating HTML pages just from like as just a slide, right? Just as this type of slide. So what I'm saying is that creating this used to be something, now it's zero value. Anyone can. Not only this, even the more sophisticated simulation. Think if I actually, one of the part, for example, yeah, so I think I had to do a full, for one of, let's say, a presentation I had to give. I had to do also a full React, actually. This one is HTML, but I had to do a full React something just that contains simulation, because I wanted to simulate and I wanted to be completely interactive, just like this. But in that case, it was actually a simulation where, you know, points are moving and gravities are affecting on it, whatever. And in the past, I mean, I couldn't even imagine, because I was giving just some kind of astrophysics simulation related things, but I was able just to do that also in a couple of minutes, right? So I think the point is that I'm sure, you know, it's not me who's doing it. It's just that the LLMs are capable to generate a full complex site And so my point is to basically, for like my goal, basically my contribution becomes in thinking it, and in thinking it the right place. Of course, a website in a wrong place is not useful. Like, why did I want this, for example, versus just I use just a simple other slide, because I just wanted it to be like, to be shown like that. I wanted just to not really go through one by one like that. I just want it to be slightly interactive. So it's more of that. My intent is more important than the actual output. Yeah. So yes, I had the research and stuff, but the creation of this actual thing just came to me just why I was late was just I was doing some other things, and I just generated while I was just opening the meeting, like the meet link. And it just really, it's between while I was joining versus that it just finished, and then I just presented, right? But I knew what it was. So I think, yeah, for your question. Okay. And I have a question about intent specification for systems where requirements change a lot. Yes. Do intent specification need all requirements to be set at the beginning? No. So that's really a very good question that I just went. It's the whole point why you are doing the hook is because things change. A lot more evolves. Now, intents, like I have given you one reading material that really is, intent is, it's not just only now, like it has been in robotics, especially in Mars rovers and stuff. Intent specification and how you define them was very important. So, it was almost always, it has been a research, and so there's a lot about it. So intent has multiple ways. So intent may change, but also intent may get refined, just like a code. A code, the same code can be refactored. And there is a multiple way of refactoring a code, right? So it's in applying this design principle, that simplification. Intent being described also by a certain context and all that, it can be refined, let's say, using a proper language or, shortened or kind of this and that. So intent actually can evolve, but then there's another one. Actually, the intent is now not sufficient anymore. So the intent actually evolves. And in that case, it's really just like, for example, you wanted a UI to be interactive, but now you don't want interactive. Interactive is not sufficient enough. Now you want it actually static, or you want your intent. But in this case, the overall that we want the UI can keep. So intents are also structured. So that means they have structured three type of, because you have like a business goal where like you define by user stories, and from that tasks and stuff. So intents are really, capturing intents is not an easy way, because you're trying to translate an informal specification to a formal specification. And almost always one has, like, the informal specification can be described by multiple, it's not unique. There is no one unique specification to it. For that reason, this is complex. So you just only, that's what I'm saying, you just do intent specification requirements. I think this is just defined by some schema, and you just store them, and then you have to separate what is the same intents that are evolving just through refinement versus a different intent or related intent. So as a graph, you might just say, this intent used to be, that intent used to be whatever, and then they are interact with each other and ultimately form this one. So yes, so I think thinking about that is the very core of this project, actually, in some sense. But I don't want you to spend also too much. We will again and again revisit that one, read some of the materials that are shared, and get just a quick understanding, so that for your implementation, and you will improve it. So there's no perfection, there's no perfect answer for that. So it's just basically creating that. And if you get a chance in another day, I would personally love to see a demo of how you create this cool stuff. I mean, I don't have to, you don't have to wait another time. It's very simple because I don't do anything at all. If you have just Gemini, that's what you just do. This is what you do. I had this as my just like you see my screen, right? So just this was my research, like I had done before it also. I had done some things like that. Basically, I had this, and then I just said create, and I created web page. And just that, because I had some interactions, there is some context, but I could have created also flashcards or audio overview. And in many other even LLMs, you can just do also many other complex things. So if I wanted actually this thing to be a React, then I just tell it, generate the thing with React, and I specify. So nothing more. And usually what I do is that I specify in Gemini whether it, usually I do have deep research, then Canvas, and then sometimes if I want just the deep thing is more the, if I want the LLM's power, and I do deep research. If I want basically research, external research, Google search and all that to complement. So almost always that's what I do. And then from that, I would just create Canvas that would just synthesize and then deep thing. So it's just, you know, and then you generate lots of slides by exporting lots of just, let's say, you export it to docs. And then after the docs, usually if I want to combine them, then I will combine them as well by just, I go into Notebook LM and I create some Notebook LM. And in the Notebook LM, it actually can create also, if I have now sufficient information, I can create also a slide deck if I want to just in the slide deck. Again, that's just, yeah, and then I create that and it's sufficient. So nothing more, nothing fancy. Okay, hope that just gives you, and Tadassa, yeah.
Just adding for asking for a clarification about the question I asked before.
Yeah.
So my question was to get some resources, or if we can find some resources to read about this. If the research document and the challenge document is enough for this, because I was assuming these documents that you shared are a step-by-step guides to build the IDE. But actually, so I want the context for the context. That's
yeah,
what
I think I would say sufficient context is there, but I think it would be, you would be very much like earlier, I know, like what actually directly asked it. You know, these things are research. Some of them really, you don't expect that this is a solved problem. As I said, it's not like, it's not a school where I say, just do this project, do this assignment. This is really, 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 if you do it well, you can actually sell it for probably a couple of $1 million if you do it well. So in a way, it's open-ended. Do I know the solution? No. So in that sense, the context is sufficient enough that it gives you the research documents I have shared and kind of references there and stuff, gives you sufficient context. But you would be very much, there are going to be lots of questions that as you get in the detail, you might not, that might not help answer the context we gave you. So in that case, you have to research on your own.
Yeah, yes. I'm assuming like if I am building a front-end agent, that means I need to be a front-end expert to understand the front-end developer's intent. And if it's general purpose, I need to understand the general purpose's intent. That's why I ask you about the resources. If you can find what will be their intents, to know the intents of the user.
So you can assume that the way, I think if you go to the challenge document, there's a, you know, that was one question that I had very much wanted to address, right? Because it's not a very easy problem, especially in here. When do you actually introduce the hook? You know, and then it's only then that you are, you know, as current designed, it assumes just intent ID. But where do you create that intent ID? Who creates that intent ID? When a person asks, you assume that the intent ID exists. But how do I create intents? Of course, I have also an intent capturing, like active intents, but who creates this and whether they are actually, because these intents define what actually is supposed to be done together with what the user is asking, right? So how are you going to put together all of this in such a way that the intent is clear, and then from that intent, then in the pre-hook then goes into, you know, your spec documents and your documentations, and then also what you have already before, and then collects and prepares like this basically to inject the context. That's called let's call it intent context. That one is an art. So there you can do a lot of things. You can do just simple, like you just say like, okay, I'm just going to get all of it from that data model and from that, and I'm just putting it. I don't really try to help anything. The other one is I might actually, I know maybe just the intent has also a classification, whether it's front-end intent, back-end intent, whatever. And I'm going to define that very well. And then I'm going to use a skill, another skill that would actually implement it, exactly that. You could make it very complex. But I think for now, I would just say, take a simpler approach so that you can do something to prove. So I hope that is, there is more to it as you start implementing it. Okay, Zerubbabel.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your clarification, Ababal. I was going through the challenge documents and I get some kind of confusion on parallel orchestrations of multiple worker agents.
Yeah.
So those agents are supposed to work based on the intent that we define for them.
Yeah.
But my concern is, what if those multiple workers modify a kind of just the same file or the same part of code, and you know, some kind of conflict is going to happen.
Exactly. That's how you handle it. But you know, you're asking me exactly what. Think about how to handle it. So normally, you know, you would just do like trade logs and things like that, and you know, all of the, you know, converse with AI how you handle it, how others handle it. You know, maybe already in client they already actually thought about it. Maybe in Ru, like they might actually thought about it. Or if not, you may be just like, okay, I'm gonna look. So for example, if you're using like file system or SQLite, you can't write and, you know, simultaneously. You have to log and things like that, right? So you have to think about what is the other solution. Maybe just, you know, should every agent would have a scratch, their own scratch system, and then ultimately there's going to be a unifier, like that would just be like the orchestrator will just orchestrate and write. You know, how does that negotiation work? I think even if you don't implement it, just it's important to think, because, you know, as I said, you don't really code it. You just have to really understand the intent, what you want to do, what's the best practice, how do people approach it, how do, like, you know, Cloud Code, go to Cloud Code, just you know, browse Cloud, you know, Cloud Code is also open source, just look at it, how they did it. Maybe another one, you know, just either maybe has handled it, you know, go and look at it. You know, you open everything basically to understand and learn, to see how you do it. So yes, that's one task. Like basically right now, this is something to be solved as well. Like, how do you implement this thing? Yeah, like such that multiple agents can work as well. Yeah. So Johannes asked it again about vibe coder and orchestrator. You know, really not. So the evolution was vibe coder, and then it became it's called I forgot the name again. So the context engineer, and then after that it was actually also you were supposed to actually tell the conductor. So the word conductor came, and then the word conductor went, and orchestrator came. So the evolution in all of them is, the more the agents are maturing, the more you assign trust to them. So the delegation becomes more and more complex. When the LLMs and the agents weren't that good, the vibe coder was just sitting in front of the IDE and kind of just explain their intents with English. Zerubbabel, I think you should mute. So, and then that was vibe coder. And then when the vibe coder, so the vibe coder is everywhere, right? Every time you're just interacting with just English, you call it vibe. But then as vibe becomes a lot more, like when agents become good, then it's about how you really tell them, like as a conductor says. The conductor, you know, just instructs like these things, do this, do that, you know, but it's in front of them. A conductor, you know, in a let's say in a music, like it's conducting such that the different orchestra is trying to just do it. But then once the agents also got really, really better, then the term orchestrator came. Orchestrator is now, you don't even see the musicians playing. You're orchestrating. You're like type of a manager who's like, you have swarms of agents and all that, and just you basically are designing and just executing them. You're orchestrating multiple types of things, like multiple resources. Like a CEO is a kind of, you know, an orchestrator. A CEO is not a conductor. A CEO doesn't go to every worker or assembles every worker and say like, okay, now do all this. Even if, however, like multiple fingers and however multiple things they have, they still just sit in the office, design with their small whatever team or themselves, design some plan, you know, and then just sends by email and everybody just receives that and executes them. That's kind of orchestration type. So as you can see, vibe is the general term that you are defining things through the term, the English version, and a lot more it translates into ID still, but it can be anything. While a conductor is becoming like, okay, now you can orchestrate many, you can put many things, but you still are in front of it just with ID, like, you know, just to do it. While an orchestrator is basically, you don't need even to be in your ID. It can be in your mobile and orchestrate something, and then everybody, just the agents pick up and do it. So it's kind of that kind of differences. One difference I know, okay, that is good. Johannes already attempted it. Jacob, yes, we must read the code, but not like the human. So I think, yeah, that's basically it. So I'm surprised that there aren't so far, there aren't any female people just asking. And it's a bit, you know, it has been now 2 sessions and there was 0. I think that's not a good, that means we are not doing well to welcome you either, or you're taking it passive. I'm challenging everybody. And ultimately we will call, but just better if it's actually people are just more active. So I know that this is just a beginning, the first day. There's more to come, but just I'm pushing and pressuring and kind of challenging you all. Okay, yeah, any other question? Anything that I haven't answered or anything that... Hopefully that was useful. So yeah, I think I mean, I run another agent. I think Johannes, you're saying agents take 10 minutes, run another agent by the next, and then if you have 9 minutes, now run another agent. And then when you run 10 agents, then you will have, you know, basically no time, because you have to review all of that or do that or think, stop and stuff. But yeah, but, you know, more, that is more of just, let's say, a simple answer. But I would say, I don't think so I was showing earlier, of course, not everyone can do, you know, your PC must handle it. But right now for me, basically I have Googles that I'm reading, and then I just go back and then I do, you know, either in the notebook, whatever I do research, then I have IDs that are basically just like you know, multiple other projects that I'm doing, you know, in the workspace. I'm just showing you here. So these are all different workspaces, and I have to do some of them. I will do, and I have terminals that I am kind of running some things, and I'll check. And then I will also have actually then like different multiple terminals that I am SSHing with different projects, and I run them there as well. And so it's literally that just fire and go, and until it finishes. Here it was processing, fine. Then, okay. Sorry, just maybe I didn't share earlier, so I was just actually showing. So, you know, here I have this different, like in anti-gravity, I have different projects that's doing, and each of them, these are the different workspaces. Each of them are running, as you said, it just takes some time. And so if I'm just somewhere here, let's say, like different tabs that I'm reading, you know, Googles that I'm Googling and just learning some new concepts, you know, some of, for example, the research I gave you from black box to a blueprint, I had to read this one because like these things just are very, very well done. And that takes time. And then I do, again, the Gemini's, like some deep research and all that here. There's lots of them. And so basically, this is one, and then this is, again, you know, another terminals, another browsers that you have to handle some sessions, right? So just the simple aspect is that there is, in one go, I'm not waiting for one task to finish. I have multiple other things to read, things to fire, like and run, and terminals to SSH and do stuff, run, I don't know, and test. Basically, that's really what it means. Just you're kind of free now. Like as long as you, like when you define one place, you probably will define it. Your attention is there. And in another terminology that you have to know, the value is now, we call it intent, but intent actually, the fuel or the cost of intent is called attention. Your attention is what is being marketed, just like advertisement. So your attention is what is being sliced and sold. So how I manage my attention in different places is the habit of kind of managing my attentions is the other aspect that is will come to it. Like the other aspect, which is a lot more what makes you more productive. So I think that's Johannes. So there isn't empty 10 minutes. There is just hundreds of them, and you are just like a CPU that is computing with asynchronous computing. You know, when one is just think, then you pick another one, you run, you pick another one, and there is sufficient traits and sufficient things, attentions that I have to give to different things. That gives that's basically how you manage. And you work more than actually. So that means within 1 hour, it's like, you know, a PC used to be like, you know, one trade at a time, and the PC became a lot more. You know what asynchronous computing is? When it becomes asynchronous, it was able to do so much things. It feels like, you know, all of this we can do it because now it's asynchronous, everything. So that. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Wonderful. I'm happy that you found it helpful. So yeah, I will not take much of your time, but please, others who hasn't been speaking, I know you can't just immediately speak, you know, kind of, but get that idea. Whenever, just before you join any call, you say, I'm gonna do stuff. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna be like, okay, at least force yourself into asking questions and thinking, because even if you raise your hand before even you have a question, it's fine, because then in the meantime you will start thinking, right? So it's really important to get to that habit. So yeah, Johannes.
Okay. Hi team. So this might feel a bit silly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So can you shed light on the independent challenge work that you're supposed to do from 5 p.m. until 11 p.m.?
Sorry, like what is the question?
Can you clarify what's like the things we expected to do regarding the independent challenge work?
Yeah, go on.
Johannes, I will take that. I think you're mentioning what's on the schedule, right? So the independent challenge work is where you'll be working on the challenge documents that we gave you. So there is no like session during that time. It's just to indicate that you'll be working on the challenge document.
Okay. Like when you say working, like, what kind of work is it? Is it just me reading the researches, going through the materials, stuff like that, or like what the ideal way of doing it?
I mean, it depends on from person to person. It depends, but as long as you are putting in the effort and you are going towards in the goal of the project, then you are working on the project. Okay.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, there is questions, Rafael.
Not a question, more of a request.
Yep.
If you can, I don't know if it's possible, maybe this week, if you can share like an example of a couple of agents that are working and doing different stuff. I would like to see that, if that's okay.
So sorry, what I missed the middle.
I said if you could show us like an example of like a project that exists or is out there and has a couple of agents working together, maybe a swarm, or it could also be a simple agent. Yeah.
The one, the exact, the one that you are forking, which is the client, is just an agent. So it has multiple agents. So if you like trying to solve the, trying to work on the problem, you will, the Wednesday submission is asking you to understand the challenge itself, the challenge in that
awesome.
client. So by Wednesday, you will tell me more about it.
Okay, thank you. Really enjoyed the session.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, Adonias. So the submissions are on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Basically from here, there is a very structured, like it's not every day. It's just only on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So yeah. So it's confirming there's no. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I'm glad that everybody, at least people, found the session good. So thanks everyone. Cheers.